It's impossible to be right about everything all the time, but sometimes you can just take joy in being wrong. And wrong I was about the Georgia Tennessee game last week. I picked it right, but man, my prediction for how they were going to win it was way off. So let's start off the show. What up, beasts? Welcome to What Dudes Want to Hear. This week we will be debriefing week 3 of the college football season and looking ahead toward week 4 of the college football season, a big slate coming up this Saturday. We also are going to be looking at current Heisman rankings. So where I have my Heisman rankings and how I see this season playing out for these guys who hopefully are in New York at the end of the college football season, trying to get on stage for that trophy. But guys, let's start it off with Georgia at Tennessee. Wow, what a game. 10 out of 10. Whatever Michelin 5-star rating is the highest, give it to this game. This game felt like biscuits and gravy at Waffle House after a night out until 2 a.m. It was that good. And so going into this game, I did not expect Georgia to be able to win in a shootout. Generally, what we've seen from Georgia this season has been kind of slow running the ball. They've tried to get the pass game going against Austin Peay. They tried to get it going against Marshall, but it just seemed like the more and more they threw it, the less and less they could do. But down at one point in the first quarter, Tennessee was up 21-7. And at this point, I thought, okay, I don't see either team getting past 30 points in this game. I think Georgia might be cooked. However, Georgia's receivers made a lot of plays. Also, Tennessee had double the penalties Georgia had. And so even with this game going to overtime, I don't think this game could have ended any other way than going to overtime. But before we got to overtime, you got to remember that Tennessee was up by 8 points late in the fourth quarter. So Tennessee's up by 8. Georgia has to throw for a touchdown. Gunnar Stockton, boom, into the end zone, gets it in there. But the game's not done yet. They still need to get a 2-point conversion just to get it to overtime. And then, boom, back to pass, in the end zone, 2-point conversion. And at this point, it seemed like all the momentum was already on Georgia's side. So going into overtime, even though Tennessee did miss a field goal and Georgia kicked a field goal for the win, you really can't fully know who's always going to win this game. But it seems like, I don't know if it's the Kirby effect. I don't know if it's those red uniforms. I don't know if it's that that you hear up in the stadium, even if there are 102,000 other fans in orange and white. I don't know if it's that block G on the side of that red helmet, but Georgia figured a way to win, and it's exciting to see where Georgia could go from here, considering they have a fairly workable schedule. In this game, if they don't make the playoff, this game will be a strong reason as to why people would have been arguing for them to be in the playoff. Tennessee was the big test for Georgia, and now that they've passed it, I don't see how they wouldn't be in the playoff this year, unless they somehow string together a couple of losses later in the season. Really, for Georgia, there's only 3 to 4 solid swing games left. And they've got this win in Neyland, which shows a steady presence. Also, if we're thinking about who Georgia is going to be going up against throughout the rest of the season, sure, they got Texas. Sure, they got Alabama. But with Josh Heupel's offense, with the way Joey Aguilar can step back in the pocket and sling it down the field, neither the Alabama offense or the Texas offense fully looks like they're able to do that yet. Emphasis on yet. I think Arch can get there. I think Ty Simpson, if he's not already there, he's almost there. So Georgia getting this off their plate early in the season, that sets them up really well to potentially make a playoff run. And Georgia isn't a team that cares about playoff runs. Georgia is a team that cares about national championships. And with that win, that is a team that looks like they could potentially win a national championship that nobody's really going to be talking about just because they have won recently. We saw it with Nick Saban. Even when Alabama was the best team in the country, people were still talking about other teams because Alabama would keep on winning and keep on winning and keep on winning, and then all of a sudden, boom, you threw a sword into the bicycle spoke. Kid does a front flip over the bike and crashes. And you know who threw that spoke? You know who threw that sword in the spoke? Georgia threw the sword in the spoke. And now Georgia, they're riding the bike, just waiting for a sword to be thrown in their spoke. But Tennessee had the opportunity to do that, but they didn't quite do it. But I will give you a team that did throw another sword into a spoke of a team, and that's going to be Georgia Tech beating Clemson. Man, if you didn't watch this game at 11 a.m. on Saturday, you also missed out. This was an awesome game. Haynes King is a dog. Not only is he able to pass, he's able to run as well. And while watching this game, I really noticed that whenever Haynes King is back in the pocket, so a lot of times on first down, try and run it up the gut, 1-2 yards. Same thing on second down, 1-2 yards. Whenever you're putting Haynes King into third down situations, in my opinion, that's where he really shines. Sometimes he can pick up 7 yards on a QB run on third down. Sometimes he can throw a slant and get down 15, 20 yards down the field and keep the ball moving. And in college football, it's not always about the touchdown play. It's not always about getting in the end zone. Sometimes it's just about moving the ball down the field. And if there's anything Haynes King can do, it's move that ball down the field. And so with this win, Georgia Tech, they also have a pretty workable schedule. They obviously are going to have to play an ACC Florida team, but with the rest of the season, I'm really excited for Georgia Tech to almost be coming in to the playoff as a somewhat dark horse spot. I almost feel a little bit disrespectful describing them as a dark horse spot, but I feel like it makes sense in context considering last season's results, considering the previous couple years of results with the program. However, I think this Georgia Tech team really has turned the page, and I'm really excited to see where they can go for the rest of the season. Clemson, on the other hand, not only were their uniforms ugly on Saturday, their style of play was too. Cade Klubnik never fully looked comfortable in the pocket. They couldn't get the run game going. Dabo just sat in his khakis on the sideline, talking about, oh, we won the ACC championship in the last 10 years. What else do you want from me? Well, Dabo, whenever you set the expectation that Clemson wins national championships, it's almost like that's what fans are going to be clamoring for at Clemson. So rough win for Clemson. And this is coming from a guy who had Clemson as his national championship pick. I had Cade Klubnik as one of my top 3 quarterbacks in the country going into the season. And at this point, unless they win out and somehow win the conference, I think this season just might be a wash for Clemson, which is somewhat concerning considering this was a season that Clemson felt like it was building to. Obviously, not every ending is a fairy tale ending in college football, and especially in college football. All it takes is 2 losses for you to end the season. This isn't NFL. This is college. With only 12 playoff spots and 130 plus teams vying for those spots, it doesn't always work out. And we saw that for Clemson as, again, somebody threw a sword in their bicycle spoke. Now that tire is popped. I think they can put the tire back on. Don't get me wrong. But for right now, the tire is popped. Let's talk about another popped tire. Let's go to Gainesville, Florida, but specifically in Baton Rouge. So this weekend, LSU beat Florida. Pretty low-scoring game. DJ Lagway, though, stat of the game, 5 interceptions. For some reason, they would not run the ball. But DJ, he kept chucking it. And whenever you throw 5 interceptions, I don't care how good your defense is playing. I don't care how good your running back is. You're not going to be able to do anything, especially against an LSU team that, while it has struggled offensively, we've recently come to expect that LSU identity to be strong offense play, strong quarterback play, shots down the field. We recently learned this week that Garrett Nussmeier is a little hobbled up, and that definitely is affecting this LSU team that we had really high expectations for going into the season. But again, with this, I don't want to go into the hot seat talk, but if we're thinking about Billy Napier, already 1-2 this season, was basically a hair away from getting fired last season. Billy Napier is coaching for his job more this season than he was last season. And for comparison, last season, he was basically fired by the boosters, but the administration just didn't do anything, so he kept his job. So Billy Napier, especially going into this game against Miami this week, which we'll preview later in the show, man, I bet I feel sorry for the conversations that are happening at his dinner table right now. The casserole doesn't tend to taste as good whenever you put up a stinker in 5 interceptions in Baton Rouge the previous weekend. Prayers, T's and P's to the family dining room at the Napier household in Gainesville, Florida this weekend. Let's send it up to Indiana. Texas A&M beat Notre Dame. Man, for Aggie fans, this is the program win that Mike Elko has been looking for. Elko has come into College Station. He's implemented the grind mentality. He's implemented the lunch pail mentality. Coming up to work, rolling your sleeves up, and getting after it. And this kind of culture, this sort of feel really exposed itself in this Notre Dame game. A lot of people after the game, so with this being a 41-40 win and Notre Dame scoring a touchdown right before the end of the game and them dropping the placeholder dropping the ball so they couldn't get the PAT off, and then Marcel Reed taking it down the field to score 7 on them. A lot of people may say that's the placeholder's fault. That is not the placeholder's fault. That is the Notre Dame defense's fault for not being able to stop A&M on multiple fourth downs in the fourth quarter and ultimately letting them pop 41 on them at home. So with Notre Dame, their strength of schedule for the rest of the season is not of the level to where I think they'd be able to make the playoff, especially over a 10-2 Big Ten team or a 10-2 SEC team. Heck, at this point, even a 10-2 ACC team with how deep that conference looks this year. So Notre Dame fans, I'm sorry, but this may just not be the year for you. Y'all had a great year last year. You made it to the national championship. Riley Leonard looked great. Got to show off your program in a playoff win at home against Indiana. But that was last year. We're living in the Big 2-5 this year, and the Big 2-5 has not been kind to Notre Dame. I think they've still yet to win more than one game in the Big 2-5. So we'll see how that goes. I have a feeling they'll win more than one game in 2025, but for right now, that is some room for improvement that they could look at. So let's send it over to Columbia, South Carolina, where of all teams, the Vanderbilt Commodores absolutely smacked the South Carolina Gamecocks this Saturday. And this is a South Carolina Gamecock team that a lot of people were really excited about. Lenora Sellers was on a lot of people's lists for the top 10 quarterbacks in the nation. Dylan Stewart was among the best defensive players in the nation coming into the season. But there's one reminder I need to give y'all. Preseason doesn't mean anything. I'm going to whisper it for you again for the people in the back. Preseason doesn't mean anything. What actually means something is what you do on the field. And what South Carolina did on the field was they laid a stinker. After that opening touchdown drive where you go through the play sheet, you go through the script, and you get the touchdown, and awesome. Williams-Brice is going crazy. The towels are flying. It already feels like October. And then Diego Pavia hit you with the Theo Vaughn special. I say Theo Vaughn special because Theo Vaughn was at the game, and with the Vanderbilt win, Diego Pavia has supposedly offered his mother up for a date for Theo Vaughn. More to come on that saga. Drop in the comments if you want to hear about that, because that's a tangent I can go on. But strictly speaking, football, man, what does this say about the Vanderbilt program? Vanderbilt is ranked. Vanderbilt looks like a tough team. This looks like the James Franklin Vanderbilt teams that we saw that ultimately got him the job at Penn State. But the thing with Vanderbilt now is there's not a reason to necessarily leave Vanderbilt. So let's lay this out. So Vanderbilt is in one of the biggest markets in all of college football, located in Tennessee, located in the Southeastern Conference. That's the first thing. Number 2, you can pay players now. Novel concept. We can pay players. And yes, Vanderbilt has a lot of money having alumni, rich, if you will, wealthy, prosperous, philanthropists. Philanthropists? I don't know if we describe giving money to NIL as philanthropy, but we're going to use it for today. So they've got the money, they've got the location, and now They've got a coach with a mean quarterback who is now challenging for a 7th year of eligibility. Personally, don't think he should get it. However, I understand the appeal. So Vanderbilt is a force to be reckoned with. This isn't your mama's Vanderbilt. This isn't your granddaddy's Vanderbilt. This is the current day Vanderbilt. This is the Vanderbilt that the Gen Zers are talking about that quote unquote cooked South Carolina this Saturday. So Vanderbilt, if you have them on your schedule, look out. We'll be talking more about that later in the show. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about Miami beating South Florida. So going into this game, I had Miami winning. I had Miami cover, or actually no, I had USF covering the spread. I thought it would still be a little closer. That spread ended at about 17.5, closed right before the game. But man, Miami put the beat down on South Florida. There was no way South Florida was going to be able to surprise this Miami team. Miami was locked and ready to go, even if they were playing on the CW. And yeah, Miami looks great. More to come about that in the show later. However, with South Florida losing, I still have a lot of faith in them with their ability to potentially make the playoff. I think within the American Conference specifically right now, it's really a battle between South Florida and Tulane, and eventually they're going to meet. And whenever they meet, I'm going to be eating popcorn on my couch, under a blanket, fully locked into that game. So very excited about who's going to come out of the American Conference this year, because I think the team that comes out of the American Conference, we will see that team in the college football playoff. So with that being said, that's going to be it for recapping this last week of college football. But I was talking about it earlier. I was talking about my quarterback rankings going into the season. But with quarterback talk, you always got to talk about the dang Heisman. And so let's talk about it. So I'm going to give you my 5 kind of Heisman hopefuls this year. And so coming in at number 5, we're going to have Haynes King. With Haynes King, man, that kid has looked great this year. He's able to run the ball. He's able to throw the ball. He's able to get his team to wins without having to do, or while being able to do everything he needs to do to win. Do I think he can work on the long ball? Yes. But also, to what extent is that a scheme problem? To what extent is that a trusting his wide receivers problem? So with Haynes King, whatever he needs to do, he has shown that he is able to win. I just worry about durability with him. I mean, he's had injury concerns in the past. I would never wish an injury on someone. And also, you have to be able to account for potential injuries whenever you're running the ball as a quarterback that much, especially against these physical defenses. I'm telling you, whenever Clemson hits you, even if they lost the game, it still hurts. You still got to take the ice bath after the game. So definitely a thing to keep your eye on is Haynes King's durability throughout the season. But if he's able to stay durable, I feel really good about Haynes King. I think he has great potential to eventually end up in New York City for that Heisman ceremony. So give me Haynes King at number 5. At number 4, even after their loss to Florida State, I'm going to go Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson has been putting on a clinic. He had a perfect game within these past couple weeks, and this last game against Wisconsin, he was pitching lights out. And obviously, going into the season, not a lot of juice around Wisconsin, but still to be able to control an environment like he did in this situation, I think Ty Simpson is going to be a great player for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Along the lines of the Florida State loss, yes, it was embarrassing. Yes, they didn't look great, but I think with the weapons that Ty Simpson has in Ryan Williams, in his offensive line, in pretty much anybody he can toss the ball to on that Alabama team, Alabama is always going to have a talent roster available to be able to set up quarterbacks well. It just takes the right quarterback to go in and take that opportunity. And from what I've seen from Ty Simpson so far, he is able to go in and grab that opportunity by the neck and start wringing it out like a squeaky chicken. So Ty Simpson at number 4. At number 3, I will be going Baylor's very own Sawyer Robertson. Sawyer Robertson is currently 2nd in the nation in passing yards, and he led the campaign to come back from down 2 touchdowns in the 4th at Southern Methodist. Again, we need to realize that SMU was a playoff team last year, and SMU retained their quarterback from last year. So It's not like he's going up against chumps up in Dallas. And with this drive that he was able to lead from coming down from 2 touchdowns, bums don't do that in the fourth quarter. What bums do is they see, oh, look at the scoreboard. We're down by 2 touchdowns. Well, guess we might as well get back on the bus and start driving back to Waco. It's only 2 hours, but that's not what he did. And currently, I don't think he has the amount of buzz that you would see from some of the other guys on this list, as Baylor's not generally considered to be in that national scene as much as your SEC teams, as much as your Big Ten teams, as much as some of the ACC teams. I still think he has the ability to change that perception depending on what happens against Arizona State this next week. And while the loss to Auburn during week 1 does hurt his campaign, I think we need to realize that Auburn is a very solid team. They're probably going to get chewed up in SEC conference play, but every team in SEC conference play is going to get chewed up. But coming into the season, we need to remember that this was a huge matchup. This matchup had some juice, and you can't necessarily blame Sawyer Robertson for having a bad defense. Baylor is still a competitive team without a defense in the Big 12, and Robertson is really the player that allows them to have that ceiling of 9-3 as opposed to going 4-8 on the season. So give me Sawyer Robertson at number 3. At number 2, I'm going to go Oklahoma's John Mateer. And while I know John Mateer has been at the top of many a Heisman list as of recently, I have him at number 2, which I'll explain. And so Oklahoma, they have a quarterback again. And a quarterback that brings the juice, that allows OU to be in the national spotlight. That quarterback is always going to be recognized as a Heisman hopeful or even a Heisman favorite. And so just in the Michigan game alone, he was able to lead a championship drive in the fourth quarter, knocking 8 minutes off the clock. That's a stat that not enough people are talking about, that ability to take time off the clock, that ability to look somebody in the eye and say, hey, I'm going to run this down your throat, and then proceeding to effectively run it down their throat. That is what John Mateer has been able to do, both through the run game and through the passing game. And so him playing with this competent offense at OU, this allows OU to win games. And what do Heisman voters like? Winning games. And so OU can win in more ways than just through the defense. Last year, OU won a lot of games through their defense. They won pretty much 0 games except for beating Maine through their offense and Temple. So OU can win in ways that show complementary football. And still, having this quarterback that can't lead a fourth quarter drive is the kind of guy that Heisman voters are going to look at the end of the year and say, man, this kid was a stud. But with Oklahoma's season schedule being as difficult as it is, I think they will still be able to get through the season pretty effectively. But I'm currently leaning toward a Heisman favorite that hasn't been talked about as much, but is my Heisman favorite. And that guy is going to be Carson Beck. Carson Beck is my Heisman. He already took down Notre Dame, who was in the Natty last year, and he ruined South Florida's big coming out party. He has the ability to beat both Florida and Florida State, their next 2 games. And after that, who's Miami playing? SMU? Louisville? Pitt? His running game is strong enough to play complementary football, and the team is averaging 5.1 yards per carry. If he can beat the other Florida schools, Beck, mark my words, will be your Heisman. He's throwing 79% clip, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and I expect that to level up as the season continues. He's playing in a Mario Cristobal offense. He has the shackles of the Georgia National Championships finally off of his shoulders. I believe Carson Beck will be your Heisman in the year of 2025. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start previewing what next week is going to look like in college football. So if you're running that dual screen setup in the 11 a.m. slot, the game that's going to be on your biggest TV, you're going to want Texas Tech at Utah. This is a Fox Big Noon kickoff game. So you're going to have Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson on the mic, just really saying whatever they want to say, not necessarily always giving commentary. But Gus Johnson is going to entertain you nonetheless. So keep the volume on for that one. And then you're also going to have SMU at TCU. this is an interesting matchup. This is a big DFW rivalry, and with TCU's Josh Hoover kind of having some juice, and SMU, Kevin Jennings, he's still a baller. Even if they did look rough against Missouri State, I'm still going to have that on my smaller TV this weekend, and I think you should too. At the 2:30 slot, you are going to have Auburn at Oklahoma. This is a revenge spot for Jackson Arnold. As everybody's been talking about, Jackson Arnold was a highly recruited, sought-after guy coming out of high school, commits to Oklahoma, sits on the bench for a year. And then after that year, kind of pushes Dylan Gabriel out to greener and better pastures, and he becomes the starter in a really rough offense, an offense that lost multiple starters on the offensive line early in the season, an offense that at times had their 5 starting wide receivers out for almost the entire season, without really indication that they were ever going to come back. But this Auburn team is going up against an Oklahoma team that has a very strong defense, that has an incredibly solid guy at quarterback, a Heisman candidate in my eyes. So with that being said, give me Oklahoma in this game. I think Oklahoma's game environment, I think John Mateer, and I think the crowd's ability to kind of get into Jackson Arnold's head, I think that's going to all alter how this game is played. And so, yeah, give me Oklahoma in that game. On your smaller screen, you should have Michigan at Nebraska. Now, while Michigan does have that loss against Oklahoma, if you didn't see what Michigan did to Central Michigan last week, honestly, don't turn it on, because Michigan proceeded to murder their Central neighbors for 60 minutes by over a total of 60-point differential. So Michigan, they're letting Bryce Underwood spin the pill. And with that being said, they look a lot more solid. But we also need to talk about Nebraska. We're in year 3 under Matt Rule. We're in year 2 under Dylan Raiola, his quarterback. With Matt Rule, he is a very solid coach. He's a coach good enough to have been in the NFL. Was he good enough to stay in the NFL? Not quite. But I think with his ability to recruit at Nebraska, with Nebraska's history as a dominant program, Nebraska has the opportunity to really put their stamp of approval on themselves for the year, and I think they will be able to do that against Michigan. Give me Nebraska in Lincoln on Saturday. At 6:30, we're going to have Florida at Miami on the big screen. So with Florida at Miami, while Florida is in kind of that wounded animal mode, they're 1-2. Billy Napier's family dinners are awkward. DJ Lagway's NIL buddies might not be returning his texts quite as much right now. Even with that, Carson Beck is too strong at quarterback. His receivers are too good. His running game is too good. Mario Cristobal's defensive hires have been too good for Florida to pull the upset here, especially at Coral Gables. So give me Miami in this game. We're also going to have Illinois at Indiana. So with Illinois and Indiana, this is a game that not many people are talking about. This is a top 20 matchup. Number 9 Illinois at number 19 Indiana. Honestly, if the Big Ten had a deal with ESPN, I believe College Game Day would probably be here instead of in Miami. But with this game, I think there's going to be a lot of juice behind it, and this is really a show-me game for both of these programs. Neither programs have really played any major competition so far, barring Illinois having played Duke earlier in the season. But beyond that, what have we really seen from either team? So this is a big prove-it spot for both teams. I think whoever wins, we're not going to be able to tell much about them because this is really the only major competition they've played so far. But it is an interesting game nonetheless, as somebody has to lose. Also, since it's the nightcap, you're going to have your phone out watching another game. So whenever you're going to the bathroom, you're taking a peek at your phone, you're going to be taking a peek at Baylor versus Arizona State. And with Arizona State at Baylor, I think this is an opportunity for Baylor to get Sawyer Robertson back on that Heisman path. Arizona State coming off a rough week against Mississippi State. And from the way they've played this season, I don't have a ton of faith in them to be able to go on the road at Baylor and beat them. So go ahead and give me Baylor in this game. And then after dark, I actually have some of my best leans for this week as far as betting goes. I'm not a gambling man, but if I was, I would go ahead and watch that UTSA at Colorado State game and the Cal at San Diego State game. And so I'm taking UTSA in the Colorado State game. I was able to get 4.5 points for them. So I think they're going to win by at least 5 at Colorado State. Colorado State doesn't have a lot of juice right now. UTSA has looked good against A&M, although they lost. This is an A&M team that just beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. So I don't think that's a huge knock on them. But Colorado State, don't trust them at all. Go ahead and give me UTSA and the points in that game. Also, we're going to be looking with Cal at San Diego State in the after dark slot. And so I was able to get Cal at 12.5 points over San Diego State. And I think they're going to get those points. With Cal, they've had a very solid season so far, and their schedule is also incredibly workable. I think in about 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to look up from our screens, and all of a sudden, man, Cal only has 1 loss. Man, Cal's undefeated. I think with this game right here, this is a game where you're looking back on the schedule in 3 or 4 weeks and you're saying, man, how did I forget about that after dark game in San Diego? But you didn't forget about it because I'm telling you about it right now. So as soon as those nightcap games end, go ahead and turn those games on. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and go over my best leans for this week. So my first lean, I'm going to go ahead and take Baylor minus 2.5 against this Arizona State team. I think Baylor, with the offensive firepower they have right now, they're going to be able to sling it down the field. Their defense hasn't looked great. However, their ability to have Sawyer Robertson go on a run late in the fourth, get those touchdowns that they need to win the game, go ahead and give me Baylor in this game. Vanderbilt versus Georgia State. Vanderbilt was getting 26.5 points versus Georgia State. And this game is interesting because last year, Georgia State beat Vanderbilt outright. And so this is a revenge spot for Vanderbilt. This is also an opportunity for Vanderbilt to show just how good we were. Vanderbilt just beat Georgia, or they just beat South Carolina by how many points? 24? And they're only getting 26.5 versus Georgia State. Man, give me Vanderbilt's 26.5. I'm also this weekend, Sam Houston is playing at Texas, and Sam Houston are 41.5-point underdogs. But give me the points for Sam Houston. Texas's offense has not been able to figure itself out yet. The maximum amount of points they've even scored has been 38. So you're telling me Sam Houston, A, is not going to be able to score, and B, they're not going to be able to keep it within 41 points? No, give me Sam Houston and the points. Cal, already talked about it earlier. Give me Cal 12.5 at San Diego State. We also have the Apple Cup this week, and Washington's a team that nobody's really talking about. A couple years ago, whenever DeBoer left, they were able to snatch up Arizona's head coach, who had taken them to some great seasons. And this is a season where Washington can finally start to feel the ground beneath them. They can walk out barefoot, take their Birkenstocks off, and really feel that grass and that dirt going between the toes. And I think that grass is going to be going between their toes against Washington State. So go ahead and give me the 20.5 points for Washington. We also have North Texas at Army. Army's been kind of disappointing this season. Other than playing against Kansas State, which Kansas State hasn't looked exactly all that great either, North Texas has been blowing people out. And so with North Texas only getting 1.5 points versus Army to try and win, I think North Texas is going to win this game outright anyway. So go ahead and give me the points for North Texas. And then finally, UTSA at Colorado State. Colorado State, again, not really any juice right now, but UTSA, I think they're going to be able to thrive. They actually have a running back who has the highest amount of yards per carry against pretty difficult competition. And now that they're going to be able to play competition that's more their size, I think you need to look out for UTSA. So give me those 4.5 points and UTSA getting the win at Colorado State. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this week's show. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening. If you haven't subscribed, please click that subscribe button. That helps us build the channel. That helps us eventually get sponsors one day. That helps me make sure that I'm able to provide this content for you guys. So tell a friend, tell a family, text your grandma. Hey, grandma, go ahead and subscribe to What Dudes Want to Hear, and she can become a dude too. With that being said, goodbye, guys. Signing off. Don't forget to follow on the socials. We'll see you Saturday.